Welcome, everybody, to Dead Talk Live. And tonight we have two very special guests with us, writer director Bobby Easley and star Michelle Morris of the movie that just got released today, and that is H.P. Lovecraft's Witch House. I want to welcome both of you. How are you guys doing tonight?
Good
Great.
thing.
So I love talking to guests on premiere day. This is not your guys' first time around. Bobby, does it get any easier? Are you like nervous today? How does it feel when premiere day actually arrives?
Um, it's like the Christmas of your movie, I guess. It's a day we've been looking forward to for about 4 years now, from
Wow.
pre-production till today, and we're real excited to be here talking to you. We hope that we've done something because you want to talk to us. So,
Yeah, absolutely. How about you, Michelle? I mean, is premiere day just nerve wracking for you? How do you
And
feel?
it's like, finally. Everybody's been asking about it for so long. And I'm like, it's coming. I swear it is. And then it's finally here. And I'm like, oh shit, it's here.
I assume the 4 years COVID played a big part in that delay. Is that accurate, Bobby?
it did in some aspects, but I feel like we used it wisely. We had some time to do some reshoots, and when we weren't together, we figured out just alternate ways to drive the story a little harder, and
Hmm.
I think it worked out in our favor.
Absolutely. So, Bobby, tell us. This is a story based of H.P. Lovecraft. What can you tell us about the original story for people out there who have never heard of this story?
Well, H.P. Lovecraft is probably one of the best known literary horror authors out there before the
Underrated
Stephen
too.
King.
I gotta
Yeah,
say he's underrated.
underrated. And for the time that this man was writing at the end of the 19th century, I mean, excuse me, early 20th century, this man's writing these stories that we haven't even been able to accurately put on film in the 21st century. So um, he had collections of works, the mythos, the Cthulhu mythos collection of works. And then there were short stories outside of that. And
Hmm.
Weird Tales was a magazine that he wrote for back in the early 30s. And this is one of the shorts, The Dreams in the Witch House. And it wasn't one of his better known short stories. He didn't think it was one of his better stories either. So we had a big uphill battle there. But basically, it follows the premise of Walter Gilman, who's a student at Miskatonic University, and he is dabbling in interdimensional travel, transcendental magic, and the Necronomicon.
Yeah,
So through this, he awakens this coven of witches, and the witches familiar, the Rat Man, and all sorts of crazy things happen. And that's where we just kind of used his basic building block of a story and changed up the lead and did it our way, bringing him
definitely.
into the 21st century.
Definitely. Now, Michelle, before you got this role, were you a fan of Lovecraft? Did you know anything about him? What were your thoughts, ideas before you got this role?
This was actually the first time I'd ever heard of Lovecraft or anything about him. And Bobby was adamant, you got to read the original story. So when I went through and I read it, I was like, damn, this is pretty crazy. It's a little trippy. And I just, I'm like, how in the world are they gonna, how are you gonna make all this happen, with low budget? But I'm curious to see how, and I'm down for it, and I'm glad I did.
It worked out. Before we go further, Michelle, I got to ask you, you have like at least 95% of the screen time in this film. At least. Did you feel the burden of that to carry it throughout the whole film and put maybe a little bit extra pressure on yourself?
I know my car felt the burden. I put about 5,000 miles on my tires during this. I don't know why this camera's. I'm having a hard. Everything's backwards. Sorry, and I'm
No,
casting a shadow on my
that's
face.
all
I'm
right.
thinking,
It's all right. We could see you just fine.
but yeah, it was definitely interesting. Let me see. Is this gonna be too dark?
No,
Yeah, that is. Okay, that's too dark. But it It was definitely, it was tiring and exhausting. I mean, you had scenes where you're screaming your head off for, a half an hour at a time, and then you see like a blip of that in the movie, and then and we're going for sometimes 16 hours a day, and there was very few scenes that I wasn't in. So there was a few things that I didn't see filmed, but everything else I was there for. So I mean, it's pretty cool to be there for all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Get to see everything that's happening, and I mean, I don't really feel like it was like a burden. I thought it was pretty cool myself.
Oh, definitely sounds cool. Now, Bobby, you mentioned earlier about how you wanted to add your adaptation into the story. Uh, did you know offhand when you started writing this script exactly what aspects you wanted to change, what aspects you wanted to keep, and so on?
Well, Brian Usna, the producer of Reanimator and Honey, I Shrunk the Kid, and John Penny, Return of the Living Dead,
Mm-hmm.
they really kind of were looking at the story from a fresh set of eyes, trying to help us adapt it because it's just so much going on in that story and in such a short amount of time. And we had to stretch this to make it feature length. So then we've got to have a lot of ideas and it's got to not suck. So we had our ideas and then we make some rewrites. They toss some ideas and kind of tell us this won't really work, and I feel like I hope I'm answering it in the right way, but
Mm-hmm.
Adapting the story, first, the big thing was change the gender because I really love strong female leads. I'm a big fan of Alien. That's my favorite film of all time. Sigourney Weaver is my favorite female actor of all time.
Sigourney Weaver in this, and that from the get go, he's like, you're my Sigourney.
Ripley.
Yeah, you got to do.
You're Ripley.
Yeah, you're my Ripley through this. Yes. And so that's a big thing for us there too.
Was a lot to live up to, trying to be Sigourney.
It's like no pressure, just be Sigourney Weaver.
Yeah. But that was probably our big thing, and I could say we had just all the descriptions of the ancient alien worlds, the old elder ones, and you've got to either have $1 million Guillermo del Toro over here, or they're going to laugh you off the block, like it's a 1950s beach creature. And so we had to find that fine line of where we can what we can get away with creatively before they see when you're running out of money in the special effects department. So
absolutely. Now, Michelle, this was shot in Indiana's Hannah House, sort of an infamous place for being haunted. Are you a kind of person who gets spooked easily? Did you have any reservations about shooting there?
Well, I normally don't get spooked too easily, but there was a couple times there that did freak me out. It's probably one of the more haunted places that I've ever been, other than this one house I lived in years ago. But I see my first shadow figure there, and I thought it was just somebody from the cast or crew messing with me. And
wow.
And I was on the bottom porch outside, and there's this top balcony, and I look up and I see this, and it's just as solid as one of us, and but it's black, and it just walked right past, and I'm like, that's somebody messing with me. And then everybody's up front, and I'm like, there's nobody back here. I'm the only one. So then there was a median psychic on the team, and she told me it was the mother grieving her baby that she lost. And then I got to the bathroom where there was no lock on the door. You have to have a skeleton key. Luckily there was another door for me to get out. That was the day that we were supposed to be wrapping up filming, and it was like it didn't want us to leave.
Mm-hmm.
There was a couple other instances too, so it was
wow.
I wouldn't say like nerve-wracking. It piqued my interest more though, but then I'm like, well, this is happening. Like, I mean, what other could? So I mean, it wasn't worrisome really, but it was
kept you on edge.
Yeah. You just never knew when it was gonna. You wouldn't even be thinking about it, and then all of a sudden something like that would happen. So
No,
it
but
made me a believer, that's for sure.
it definitely sounds that way. Bobby, did you have to fight to get this location? And according to what Michelle is saying, the location definitely, helped with the ambiance. It sounds like on set. Tell us how you got the location.
Well, we we looked at a couple older buildings and smaller homes that looked kind of, the attic is the centerpiece of that story.
Mm-hmm.
And so that had to be key. And we went and luckily met with the man from the Hannah House, and he's the caretaker. He has a travel channel, all these ghost channels, and people have wanted to come in there and shoot. And he's all told them no. But for some reason, he told us yes.
Wow.
But he was under the, well, at first we asked him if we could get some exterior shots, and then we were going to try to do some soundstage construction and use different locations for the interior. Well, he kind of likes Miller Lite a little bit. And after a very lubricated afternoon of talking with him, he says, you guys can shoot inside if you want. Well, he thought when the word shooting means we're going to shoot some pictures with like a little tripod or something. No. The day we showed up with groceries, like racks of wardrobe, special effects. I mean, we've got computers, cameras, all this stuff is showing up. He says, you guys are like moving in. I thought you meant like a couple shots. And 3 years, he had to really think about it. He's like, he didn't want to break our hearts. And we had to, there was a strong afternoon where he was like, am I going to let these unknown people do it? And he realized he'd try to sit there with us and babysit, but we wouldn't get done until 2, 3 in the morning.
Wow.
And so he wanted to get home. So he just gave us a key and the code to the place. And not $1 was exchanged over that 3-year period.
That's great. I mean,
he's a caretaker by himself there, and it's a pretty large property. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how we got into doing it, but we just started mowing the grass for him, clearing brush. The crew members, Beth Hale, our producers, they were inside cleaning the house. We held a special event there, Paranormal Day, and we screened the film at the house and raised enough money to pay the property taxes almost for a full year there.
That's awesome.
And we're all still friends and talk all the time. So
that's great. Wow. I mean, that you got to say that was awesome luck getting the property. Michelle, when you got the script and you read it, tell us what went through your mind. Did you like, wow, this is great. Wow, this is going to really freak me out. What ran through your mind?
Yeah, pretty much. I'm like, ooh, witches, sweet. But, it's funny because when I read the script, it was almost a completely different story than what it ended up to be in the end. Because of all of the rewriting with Yuzna and Penny and those guys, like, yeah, I was interested from the get-go with all the craziness going on with it, but at the same time, like I said, it changed so much, and it just kept getting better. But I get frustrated with Bobby. I'm like, oh, we got to shoot that. Yeah, like that was so good. Why do we got to do that? And he's like, because it doesn't fit there. I'm like, it's fine. And he's like, nope, we got to redo it. And so, there was a lot of story changing along the way, though.
Oh, yeah.
So
that's pretty normal, though. Now, Bobby, when you were writing Alice, first of all, great move changing the protagonist from a male to female. I completely agree with that decision. It was a great move to make. When you were writing Alice's character, did you already have Michelle in mind? Did you write Alice for Michelle? Or did you write the screenplay and then Michelle came into the picture?
I like to have an idea of an actress in my head. And I originally went through a talent agency in Indianapolis. There's some great talent there, but the subject matter we're dealing with in a conservative market in the Bible Belt Midwest, it's pretty scary. And I don't want to get a girl that's into commercial work and some rom-coms and things like that over here. And they think it'd be fun to be a scream queen, but unless they've really been one, they don't know what really is entailed in that. I mean, I'm talking 65 degrees outside, wearing next to nothing, running around, covered in blood, that type of stuff.
45 degrees out there wearing next to nothing.
Yeah, jumping into gore, like gross water, and so I was trying to avoid that. And really, I had a lot of really good selections, but I would clear everything through Brian Usna, and I went through 15 girls, and he turned every last one of them down, Michelle included. Wow. And so then we were like, yeah, turned her down twice. He said, I don't think she's good for the project. I don't think she's going to work.
I don't audition well, and I told Bobby that. I'm like, I do not audition well.
And so we very luckily, through working in the horror convention circuit, because Michelle and I, a lot of us have hammered this in the past decade, going around to these shows, and we get to meet a lot of people. And so we're just literally, I'm on my last straw, and I'm like hunting around, and she's got her booth set up with her films over there. And my buddy said, Michelle. It's Michelle. I was like, totally Michelle. And then so after that con, she's at the pool, and I'm just sitting there, and she jumps in the water and just happens to swim right in front of me and does the whole little frog graceful thing. And I thought, man, I want to use her in a movie and do something like that, where she jumps into a lake or a pond to go from one dimension to the next. And the rest is history. What's funny is Brian and John, when they saw our first, principal photographer, I said, I'm just going to go with it. I've got to trust my feelings that I want to use her in this film. And boom. Then he says, I like your girl. She's very convincing for the role. Yeah. I didn't correct him, but it's funny. That's the girl you turned down twice, buddy. And now she's very convincing. So kudos, Michelle.
It's a little different watching somebody on audition tape than seeing them in real life. Michelle, did you gain a new appreciation for horror after doing this film?
Well, I already had a pretty good appreciation for horror because I have done quite a bit of it. But yeah, I think, I learned a lot from these guys. They're really good at what they do. And I already knew that, going into it. And, I'd seen some of Bobby's other works before. I'd seen Belly Timbers and one that he helped produce, Room 223 or whatever. Yeah. So, and I knew that I hadn't seen the one that he did with Bill Moseley and Kane Hodder. I think I seen part of it at a Days of the Dead, but I knew his potential. And then so when he came at me with it, it was just like, I just knew that it was going to be good no matter what he was doing. That together, I knew that we had worked together really well. So
great. Now, Bobby, you mentioned something earlier again that was very interesting, and it's very accurate about H.P. Lovecraft. Even today, in the 21st century, it is so difficult to explain his stories and put them on film. What part, if you can pick one, of his storytelling did you find most challenging?
When Alice has one of her first nightmares, and she wakes up and she's on this alien world, and she's seeing all these alien mechanics that are moving, and like buildings that look thousands of years old, and this demon Azathoth, like she sees all this. That's pretty vivid and clear. And so like, how on earth are we going to pull that off? So she got a cornfield. I mean, we thought that we can do a lot more with her being in bed asleep and then throwing it out there that she's out there seeing all this stuff. But we had a hard time because I was like searching for how can I show these vivid nightmares and Brian's like, quit having her out in the woods so much. Let's bring her back into the house because the house is a character itself.
Yeah. And
the geometric stuff going on in the attic, that's what we had to focus on. And it's just I'm thinking you'd have to have a Marvel budget, to show this stuff.
As I was watching the film, I was thinking about that. You really added in some big time visual effects with her dreams, the imagery, and working on a budget. Did you find yourself having to get really innovative and creative?
Yeah, And one thing I think is great, hands really, is that a witch uses a lot of things that are found in nature, rocks and stones, bones, stuff like that. The lore horror, voodoo-ish type creepy stuff. So very lucky we had Aaron Trimble, our costume designer, on set, because with the coven scenes and the way that, the altars, all that kind of stuff, I think that was us trying to show that in that realm of the mystery of the unknown, what's going on this altar with the baby, what's going on over here. So we had a lot of fun. It's funny, our executive producer Mike, we thought of a cocoon at some point, like this thing that's in a tree that this demon would come out of, and so we built this thing, and it's still in his tree to this day. And he's not moving, and it's like, yeah, it's kind of cool. It'll have leaves on, and it's just gonna look crazier over time. It's a good conversation piece in his backyard.
I loved how you closed out the film. We're not going to spoil anything, obviously, but did you toss around a lot of ideas on how you were going to close the film out and settled on the way you did?
My goodness, yes. That's the hardest thing, is to conclude it, and that's what we really wrestled around with. But I like how we pulled that together and how it comes across. I mean, you could really do more with it, but in the end of the short story, we show you what they show you in the end of the short story, but it's just his stuff. I always like to say Lovecraft is like a biblical writer.
Yes.
The Bible is open to so much interpretation, like his stories are. You could take 5 people and have them read the story and say, what did you get from it?
And you get 5 different answers.
Totally. And so it's like, we had to interpretate it, and now we're giving it to the audience. And I'm hoping that it does spark some people interest in his work, and maybe some people will go and look up the source material and judge for themselves, and see if they like it.
Me too. Now, Michelle, before we go, one question for you. What did you walk away with from this film that you'll hold for the rest of your career? Was it an experience? What did you learn in making H.P. Lovecraft's Witch House that you didn't really see coming, that surprised you, and you're going to take with you for the rest of your career?
Wow, that's a good question. The dreams, the scary dreams. That house. No, the experience I think that I'm going to take with me is with everybody. The team that we worked with everybody was so amazing, and I made some best friends out of it, and some of us are all working on future projects together.
Nice.
And we learn a lot from each other. Everybody was just wonderful, because I was a 95% of it, but it took a whole lot of people to make this what it was. So
absolutely. I want to thank the both of you for coming on here and sharing your thoughts and experiences about making this movie. Michelle, I'm assuming you probably never want to go to the Hannah house ever again with the experience.
Oh, no, I love it. I love it. I mean, it's a friendly ghost. It's okay.
Yeah. As long as they wanted you to stay, which is good, as opposed to them wanting you to go the moment you step foot in the door.
Yeah. The one that wanted me to go was, I think, Grandma. You know the scene where the redhead and I kind of get close?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we were in Grandma's room, and back then they weren't they weren't jiggy with that, so to speak.
I totally understand.
And Grandma, somebody stuck their thumb in my knee during that scene. I was like and I had to catch my breath, like it hurt so bad. And then the other girl with me was feeling like needle pricks, like pin pricks, and
wow,
and stuff like that. And we had the sewing room was right next to us, so I'm like, that's the only time I think I felt not wanted there.
Yeah.
Can I add, when the day we started shooting there, the batteries drained very quickly on everything.
Mm-hmm.
We were spending $20 a day just on AA batteries for the sound equipment. And they say that type of paranormal energy will drain batteries.
Oh, yeah.
And the one big paranormal event that we all noticed, it was a scene where she's laying on a ballroom floor and the witch is crawling over her, listening. I was hearing what sounds like a baby crying, and it kept, you know how men can tune that out a little bit, but it just kept tinging in my ear. And it's like almost 1 a.m. on a Sunday.
Wow.
There's no real things around that house. And I said, hey, Toby, are you picking that up? My audio engineer takes his headphone off and he says, a baby crying? And when I didn't tell him what I heard, I said, are you picking that up? And he said, a baby crying. And when he said that, the whole room fell silent.
Wow.
And we heard it for a couple more times, and then it stopped. And we were all like, all right, do we agree we heard that? And we kept, because we had so much more to shoot. But the caretaker won't tell you what type of things are happening there. He'll let you come to him and tell him what you've seen. And he'll give you an interpretation of it, because people will try to say they feel it in the walls and all this stuff. But he said that was baby Elizabeth that we heard. Wow. She was the baby of the woman that you saw walking on the little thing.
Yeah.
She was born for 3 days, died, and they buried her on the property. And then they ended up moving that body and interring it at Crown Hill Cemetery years later.
Wow. Jam. You guys had some definitely interesting experiences out there, I'll tell you that much. Again, to our audience, the movie is called H.P. Lovecraft's Witch House. It's available today on DVD, digital, on demand. Check it out. It stars Michelle Morris as Alice. It is written and directed by Bobby Easley over here. Check it out. And, you know, H.P. Lovecraft is what everybody thinks that Stephen King is the original scary horror author. No, there were people before him. And Stephen King is great, but H.P. Lovecraft was on a level all on his own back in those days. So check it out. I want to thank our guests, Bobby Easley, Michelle Morris. On behalf of all of us, stay safe and stay walking. Good night, everybody.
Thanks for having us.